Welcome to our channel. Hollywood Movie Review. Free Guy 2021 Movie Review. Free Guy is a 2021 American science fiction action comedy film directed and produced by Shawn Levy from a screenplay by Matt Lieberman and Zach Penn, and a story by Lieberman. The film stars Ryan Reynolds as a bank teller who discovers that he is a non-player character in a massively multiplayer online game and allies with a player to prevent its discontinuation. The cast also features Jodie Comer, Lil Rel Howery, Utkarsh Ambedkar, Joe Keery, and Taika Waititi. Lieberman began writing the script in 2016, which was acquired by 20th Century Fox shortly after. Levy passed on the script but reconsidered after Hugh Jackman introduced him to Reynolds, resulting in him leaving the film adaptation of the Uncharted video game he had been developing. The acquisition of 21st Century Fox by Disney made Free Guy one of the first films produced by the studio to continue production under Disney's ownership. Filming took place in Massachusetts and California between May and July 2019. After Free Guy was delayed twice by the COVID-19 pandemic, it premiered at the 74th Locarno Film Festival on August 10, 2021, and was released theatrically in the United States by 20th Century Studios 3 days later. The film was a commercial success, grossing $331.5 million worldwide against a $100 to $125 million production budget, and received generally positive reviews from critics, who compared it to films and video games such as Ready Player One, The Truman Show, The Matrix, Grand Theft Auto, and Fortnite. It received a nomination for Best Visual Effects at the 94th Academy Awards. Free City is an online game developed by Tsunami Studios. Its players people in real life wear sunglasses and spend their time fighting each other and causing mayhem. The non-player characters, NPCs, accept the chaos while living out their scripted lives, unaware that the world they live in is a video game. These NPCs include Guy, who works as a clerk in Free City's bank with his best friend, security guard Buddy. Unemployed software developer Millie Rusk plays Free City to find proof that Tsunami stole the source code from the concept game she developed, Life Itself, which included novel artificial intelligence, AI, techniques for its NPCs. Her friend and co-developer Walter Keys McKee is reluctant to help, as he now works in technical support at Tsunami. Millie's avatar Molotov Girl catches Guy's attention by singing his favorite song, Fantasy. Guy then begins to deviate from his programming, accidentally shooting a player robbing the bank, and leaving with the player's sunglasses. Believing Guy to be a hacker disguised as an NPC, Keys and his co-worker Mauser unsuccessfully try to ban him from the game. Accessing the player's view of the game, Guy visits new areas and meets Millie at vlogger Revan Button's stash house, where they attempt to steal evidence leading to her source code. Believing Guy to be a novice player, she advises him to level up. Guy rapidly progresses through the game by completing missions benevolently, standing out from other players and becoming a worldwide sensation known as Blue Shirt Guy. As Keys realizes that Guy truly is an NPC, other NPCs that Guy interacts with also begin to develop self-awareness. However, Free City 2 is due to release in 48 hours and will replace Free City, terminating all of its NPCs. Millie tells Guy the truth about his existence, but he becomes distraught and breaks off contact. Guy eventually realizes that there is something more to an NPC's existence, and goes with Buddy to get the evidence Millie wanted from Buttons, who accidentally glitched through the edge of Free City's map and discovered an older build of Life Itself, recording a video clip in the process. Guy's popularity threatens the plans of Tsunami CEO Antoine Hovakelik to launch Free City 2, so he orders a server reboot which resets Guy's memories. Guy regains his self-awareness when Millie kisses him. Guy recalls the location of an island containing remnants of the Life Itself build and they attempt to reach it before the Free City 2 launch wipes all old content from the servers, rallying the NPCs to go on strike from the game to hinder Antoine. Antoine fires Keys, has every player removed from Free City, and sends an unfinished but extremely powerful Guy-resembling character named Dude into the game to stop Guy. Initially overwhelmed, Guy then puts his sunglasses on Dude, distracting him, and proceeds to the island. Furious, Antoine begins smashing the game's network server racks with an axe in a last-ditch attempt to stop Guy, erasing Buddy and much of the game world, while firing Mauser after he soon realized that he did steal Millie's code. Before he can destroy the final server, Guy manages to reach the island and Millie offers a deal to drop the copyright infringement lawsuit and surrender the Free City franchise's profits to him in exchange for her creation. Antoine agrees to her terms, believing she made a bad deal. Sometime later, sales for Free City 2 slip because of bugs in the code and lagging online play. An embattled Antoine is in the crosshairs, but claims he is a victim of circumstance. Millie salvages her code and along with Keys and Mauser, releases the indie game Free Life, which includes Guy, Dude, and the other NPCs from Free City. Guy reveals to Millie that his code is actually a love letter to her from Keys. During the development of Life itself, Keys had encoded what he knew about her tastes into an AI routine in the game, which was eventually incorporated into Free City, explaining why Guy felt drawn to Molotov Girl. After Millie leaves the game, she and Keys kiss. Meanwhile, Guy and Dude reunite with Buddy, whose AI algorithm was reconstructed. In August 2016, Matt Lieberman spent 3 weeks writing the first draft of the spec script for Free Guy. This was sold and entered development at 20th Century Fox prior to being acquired by the Walt Disney Company. Free Guy is one of the first Fox films to continue production under Disney's ownership, as well as under the studio's new name of 20th Century Studios. Director Shawn Levy originally passed on the script. After he was introduced to Ryan Reynolds by a mutual friend Hugh Jackman, whom Levy directed in Real Steel and Reynolds co-starred with in X-Men Origins, Wolverine, Levy and Reynolds decided to work on Free Guy after rereading it together. Reynolds, who also produced the film, said, "I haven't been this fully immersed and engaged in something since Deadpool." Levy had previously been attached to the film Uncharted, an adaptation of the video game series of the same name, before he left to make Free Guy. Principal photography began on May 14, 2019, in Boston, mostly around the city's financial district. It also took place in the Massachusetts cities of Worcester, Framingham, in the former Framingham Savings Bank building, and Weymouth, at the former Naval Air Station, as well as at Revere Beach and the Paramount Pictures studio headquarters in Los Angeles, California. Filming concluded on July 31, 2019. Levy decided to hire production designer Ethan Taubman over other candidates with more feature film experience after being inspired by the energy he brought to the project. Together they created a visual Bible laying out the rules for their video game world. To split the real world from the in-game look, they specified colors, lenses, composition, and framing, camera movement, and other details. Levy found it liberating to be influenced by other games and films but not required to make a direct adaptation of an existing franchise. Taubman said the film's game world design drew primary inspiration from games like SimCity, The Sims, and Red Dead Redemption 2, while also acknowledging thematic inspiration from Grand Theft Auto and Fortnite. In order to help Reynolds fully tap into his Guy character after Deadpool, Levy suggested that he tap into his Canadian background and act very friendly, full of joy, a typical Canadian citizen. He also found inspiration in Peter Sellers' role in Being There and Will Ferrell's role in Elf because they played characters who were similar to Guy's character being simple-minded. The film features several weapons from other video game and film franchises, including the Scorpion from Halo, Combat Evolved, a Mega Buster from Mega Man, a lightsaber from Star Wars, one of Fortnite's pickaxes, the gravity gun from Half-Life 2, the portal gun from Portal, as well as Captain America's shield and Hulk's fist from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. When the film was acquired by Disney, which owns the Marvel and Star Wars franchises, the filmmakers made a request to use iconic weapons from those properties, and were granted permission to use everything they requested. The cameo by Chris Evans was suggested by Reynolds' wife Blake Lively. Levy contacted Evans, who was already in Boston shooting Defending Jacob, and asked if he would come by for 10 minutes, and he agreed. The film's score was composed by Christoph Beck. Portions of the film's score are sampled from the Disney animated short film Paperman, which Beck had previously scored. Levy had originally intended to use the song Your Love by The Outfield, but Reynolds suggested using Fantasy by Mariah Carey instead. Reynolds talked to Carey about obtaining permission to use it, and she allowed them to use the song throughout the film. A cover version of Fantasy sung by Comer was also used in the film. When promoting the film in 2019, Reynolds and Jodie joked that it was nice to work together for the first time, pretending that they knew nothing about their previous experience working together on the poorly received 2011 Green Lantern film. In July 2021, Reynolds released a video on YouTube titled Deadpool and Korg React, in which he reprised his role as Wade Wilson/Deadpool from the X-Men film series, and Jodie reprised his role as Korg from the Marvel Cinematic Universe, reacting to the trailer to Free Guy. On August 12, 2021, Dude became a purchasable outfit in the video game Fortnite alongside a series of optional quests placed into the game to allow players to unlock an emote with Reynolds' voice. Free Guy's marketing team created parody posters in the style of other video games, including Super Mario 64, Minecraft, Among Us, Grand Theft Auto, Vice City, Mega Man, Street Fighter 2, Doom, and Animal Crossing: New Horizons. Free Guy was released in the United States on August 13, 2021 in RealD 3D, IMAX, 4DX, and Dolby Cinema formats. It was the first film from Walt Disney Studios during the COVID-19 pandemic released exclusively to theaters for 45 days before releasing on streaming services. The film was initially scheduled to be released on July 3, 2020, but it was delayed because of the pandemic. It was then moved to December 11, 2020. In November 2020, the studio removed the film, along with Death on the Nile, from its upcoming release schedule until further notice. The next month, the film was rescheduled to May 21, 2021. In March, Ryan Reynolds announced that Free Guy was delayed to its August date. The film premiered at the Piazza Grande section of the 74th Locarno Film Festival in Switzerland in August 2021. Free Guy was released on digital on September 28, 2021, 45 days after its theatrical release, and was released on 4K, DVD, and Blu-ray by Walt Disney Studios Home Entertainment on October 12, 2 months after its theatrical release. It was added to Disney Plus and HBO Max in the United States on February 23, 2022. According to Samba TV, the film was watched by 2.5 million U.S. households in its first 5 days of streaming on Disney Plus and HBO Max. According to the streaming aggregator Just Watch, Free Guy was the most streamed film across all platforms in the United States, during the week ending February 27, 2022. Free Guy grossed $121.6 million in the United States and Canada, and $209.9 million in other territories, for a worldwide total of $331.5 million. In the United States and Canada, Free Guy was released alongside Respect and Don't Breathe 2, and was initially projected to gross $15 to $18 million from 4,165 theaters in its opening weekend. However, after making $10.5 million on its first day, including $2.2 million from Thursday night previews, estimates were raised to $26 million. It went on to debut to $28.4 million, topping the box office. The film made $18.5 million in its second weekend, remaining in first. The drop of just 34% marked the smallest second weekend decline of any wide release of the summer and the second best of Reynolds' career. In its third weekend, it was beaten by newcomer Candyman, but the film continued to hold well, falling by 27%, earning $13.6 million. On review aggregator Rotten Tomatoes, the film has an approval rating of 80% based on 297 reviews and an average rating of 7/10. The website's critics' consensus reads, combining a clever concept, sweet, self-aware humor, and a charming cast, Free Guy is frivolous fun. On Metacritic, the film has a weighted average score of 62 out of 100 based on 51 critics, indicating generally favorable reviews. Audiences polled by CinemaScore gave the film an average grade of A on an A+ to F scale. Peter DeBrugge of Variety magazine called the film an at times unwieldy mashup of multiple reality blockbusters like The Matrix and the Lego Movie, and said that Free Guy is a lot of fun, despite the fact that Levy and the screenwriters seem to be changing the rules as they go. Richard Roper of the Chicago Sun-Times lauded both the perfectly cast Reynolds and superb and charming Jodie Comer. Giving the film 3 out of 4 stars, he wrote, thanks in large part to the vibrant, funny, sweet, endearing work by Reynolds and Comer, Free Guy delivers. A.A. Dowd of the AV Club gave the film a C+ grade and said, for all its casual mayhem, Free Guy turns out to be a rather cuddly crowd pleaser, a high-concept blockbuster trifle with bubblegum ice cream clogging its circuits. Dowd contrasted the film with The Truman Show, saying Reynolds replicates that slightly unhinged Truman Burbank grin but not the desperation behind it. Nick DeSemlion of Empire was critical of the film. He compared it unfavorably to 2018's Ready Player One, and said that although it is eager to please, it doesn't really hang together, even as you're watching it. In August 2021, following Free Guy's successful first-day box office gross, Reynolds confirmed that Disney wanted a sequel. In March 2022, Steve Aspel, president of 20th Century Studios, said a script was being submitted shortly and called the sequel a fantastic story. Comer has expressed interest in returning for a sequel, stating, I would honestly jump at the chance to be back on a set with all those guys. The first movie was such a joyous experience, so to hear that may be in the cards sound like a ton of fun. In September 2023, Levy said the story for the sequel was being revised in response to the film Barbie. Levy stated, we are developing a sequel, but the truth is that you now have Barbie that has obviously left a mark about a character in a fictional world who comes to self-awareness. So, we're only gonna make Free Guy 2 if it's different than the first movie, and if it's different from other movies. Guy likes his shirts blue, his ties striped, and his coffee with cream and 2 sugars. He likes his goldfish, Goldie. He likes his best bud, Buddy. He likes his job at the bank so much that he makes Disneyland cast members feel like KGB agents. Don't have a good day, he tells his customers, coffee baristas, and random people on the street. Have a great day. See, Guy isn't a guy, he's code. Look underneath his shirt and skin and you'll see a bunch of ones and zeros binary elements that make up not just Guy, but literally his entire world. The bustling metropolis of Free City that Guy calls home is actually a massively multiplayer online game, and Guy's just one of scads of NPCs, that is, non-player characters who populate it. The real people who come to visit the game can do pretty much whatever they want with these NPCs. Talk with them? Maybe. Punch them in the face? Sure. Blow them up with a rocket launcher? Now we're talking. You've heard the phrase, it's their world, and we're just living in it, right? In Guy's case, that's absolutely true. If the Free City's gamers are its Harlem Globetrotters, its NPCs are its Washington Generals. In a world of whales, Guy and his cronies are krill. And because they're just fulfilling their programming, they're absolutely fine with that. See, as much as Guy likes his job and coffee and goldfish and whatnot, he feels a bit of a void deep inside. He wants to fall in love. And not just with any pretty NPC that crosses his path. No, deep down, he has a perfect woman in mind. And then one day, after his morning coffee but before the usual bustle of murders and bank robberies, he sees her, the woman of his dreams. He recognizes her immediately, and he knows he must talk with her. But how can he? She's wearing sunglasses, after all a fashion accoutrement that, unbeknownst to Guy, separates the gamers from the NPCs, the real from the binary. People with sunglasses don't talk with people like us, Buddy reminds Guy. Guy knows this. But Guy is also in love. And if he needs sunglasses to talk with this mysterious stranger? Why, he'll just, borrow a pair from one of the gun-toting visitors to his bank. Guy does procure said pair of sunglasses. And just like any nearsighted kid getting glasses for the first time, a whole new world opens up when he puts those glasses on. Suddenly, he sees the game elements embedded in Free City, from floating health packs and stacks of cash, to mission start points and secret rendezvous joints. He still doesn't associate those elements with a fictional game, he just thinks that Free City is way more interesting than he ever imagined. But when he starts to interact with Free City as a player, not an NPC, he does something startlingly divergent. Instead of robbing banks, he catches criminals. Instead of blowing people up, he dusts them off. I never hurt innocent people, he says, and it's true. What he does is so unusual in the hyper-Darwinian world of Free City that his avatar becomes a real, digital celebrity, both feared and admired by the real humans playing. And as the game's rogue Dudley Do-Right, he triggers a bout of soul-searching among many. Turns out, you don't have to be a jerk to play Free City. You don't have to troll other gamers or needlessly kill NPCs. It's okay really to be decent. Outside the game, Free City's apparent creator, Antoine, treats this new wrinkle with indifference. But to Keys and Millie, two programmers who built a much more beautiful, idealistic digital world and sold off their creation to Antoine, Guy is seen as a gift. See, they suspect that Antoine illegally used their digital creation as part of Free City's programming. They want to be justly recognized for their work. The movie's plot is partly powered by this push for that sense of fair play. But as they begin to realize that Guy is truly an NPC and is transcending the bounds of his coding, that he is somehow, in some way, alive, their goals shift. Sure, they still want to be treated fairly. But more than that, they want Guy and his slowly evolving friends to be treated as the living beings they believe them to be. In fact, you could make the argument that Free Guy is, inherently, a pro-life sort of film. Guy might not qualify as a living entity for some. But the film stresses that he does live, and as such should be accorded the dignity life deserves. That pro-life message, of course, comes with an important spiritual caveat: this life is essentially man-made. That, obviously, has some important theological implications. And for all its wit and levity, the movie postulates that the creation of life isn't necessarily reserved for God alone. The movie leans into that dissonance pretty heavily at times. When Millie, as her game-based avatar Molotov Girl, tells Guy that she's met the creator of Free City, and that he's, paraphrasing here, not a very nice person, Guy gasps, "You met God? And he's ADK." Throughout the story, we see humans behave with a certain godlike omnipotence within the world of Free City. Two moderators jump into the game using God mode, a phrase often used in games that refers to cheats or codes that allow players to do things otherwise not allowed, and the game itself is subject to reboots or outright destruction that, obviously, deeply impacts the game's digital world. Guy, when he learns the truth, wrestles with whatever differences that there might be with his feelings and his programming, but he also acknowledges that he is the product of his author. Guy and Molotov Girl kiss a few times within the game. We also hear plenty of ribald references and conversations, many are veiled to some degree, but the older you are, the more likely you will be to catch references to all manner of sexual organs, acts, and fluids. One gamer, in the guise of his male in-game avatar, gets extraordinarily close to Guy, so close that Guy says their privates are touching behind the fabric barrier of their pants, and he pops a few vaguely lewd dance moves, too. When Guy tells Molotov Girl that he's trying to be a decent guy in Free City, Molotov tells him to enjoy his lifetime supply of virginity. Two moderators call him a 40-year-old virgin to get his attention. Guy makes a reference to virginity too. At least one NPC called Bombshell in the credits is designed to be a female trophy of sorts. We see her in a car with one player, with Guy telling us that she and the rebel are probably not married. Guy later encourages her to hold to higher standards on who she goes out with, and we learn that she's written a feminist manifesto rejecting objectification and patriarchy. Characters can dress in slightly revealing garb, and one massively muscled NPC goes about without a shirt on. Someone plays with his pectoral muscles. A moderator describes his in-game skin, what he looks like in the digital world, as a mustached stripper cop. Another moderator dresses up as a pink rabbit, describing himself as an apex predator. The rabbit's ability to have sex is described as something of a superpower. We see a sign for an all-body massage. When Millie admits to Keys in the real world that she's kind of drawn to the in-game guy, Keys chides her. He's like, he says. Free city? Well, it's certainly not free from violence city. Every morning, Guy eats his morning bowl of cereal while watching the weather on TV, where the weatherman predicts hails of bullets on the north side of town and rivers of blood near the beach. Now, all of what follows comes with a caveat. While Free City is designed to replicate a hyperviolent, Grand Theft Auto sort of world to some extent, the violence we see is pretty cartoonish, is surprisingly bloodless. The most hemoglobin we see spilled is when Guy fights a bank robber for his sunglasses and gets smashed in the face with a gun, leaving his nose possibly broken and his face a bit of a mess. But he quickly cures himself by picking up a heretofore invisible health pack on the sidewalk, and he's right as rain. The same cannot be said for the player/bank robber, whom Guy shoots in the chest. He lies on the floor with a cartoonish but massive hole in his middle. Guy says that he's likely lying down because he's sleepy. People are run over by and bounce off cars and trains and whatnot. They're shot and stabbed and smashed and thrown around, sometimes through windows. Helicopters crash into skyscrapers, tanks crush cars, and lots of things blow up. One NPC powers up what appears to be a glowing fist of death in preparation to permanently end someone in-game. Someone falls from a terrific height, only to be protected from the fall by what appears to be an inflatable cocoon. One character's chest is almost crushed by another. People get manipulated in comic video game fashion. Most of the action takes place between people who, to viewers' eyes, are quite alive and real. But the film sometimes takes us to a more pixelated view. In such scenes, Guy suffers a number of bodily indignities, including taking a punch to the crotch, and inflicts some of his own as well. One F-word and about 15 S-words mar the dialogue of this PG-13 film. You also hear several uses of piece of A, D, N and H, sometimes as part of songs that play in the background, as well as one use each of the words B, CH and PSSED. God's name is misused nearly 20 times, about 4 of which are connected to D, N. We see a couple of obscene gestures and hear a joking reference to 1, 2. Free City naturally rewards bad behavior, and we see oodles of it. In the game, every law you can think of is broken with gusto. Banks are robbed, cars are crushed, red lights are run. It's all for laughs, of course, but Free City's chaos reminds us just how immoral those sprawling gaming worlds can be. And even within the game's own rules of etiquette, we hear about how many trolls Free City welcomes each and every day. Indeed, Molotov Girl suggests that Free City's jerks, those that seek to spoil the game for everyone else, far outnumber the folks who come to, just play the game. Free Guy is what you'd get if you crossed the Matrix with the Lego Movie and added a healthy dollop of Ready Player One. Yes, it's a movie about video games, and you can't throw a barrel without smacking a gaming Easter egg right in the ol' kupa. Plenty of famous gamers make cameos, as well. But it's also a movie about purpose and free will, about finding meaning in what can feel like a meaningless world. And as such, the movie's themes transcend its frenetic, wacky setting. Sometimes, we all probably feel a little like Guy. We do much the same thing day after day in a world we have very little control over. Perhaps sometimes we wonder whether there's any point to what we're doing at all. As Christians, of course, we know the answer, yes. We know we're part of a bigger story, that our roles are inherently critical to its telling. We're not just window dressing, like Guy. We're players, imbued with both free will and purpose, filled with the knowledge that we are loved and valued, and endowed with the ability to call our own shots, to help make our own little corners of the world a little better, or a little worse. The creators we meet in Free Guy are far less worthy of worship than our own divine creator. At Keys and Millie's best, they're well-meaning but fallen creatures, just like us. At their worst, the antagonists here are twisted things, blind and raging, corrupting creation even as it's made. Free Guy is hardly free of problems. The sexual references and asides can feel as steady as a Florida shower, as unwelcome as an Arctic wind. Language sours the experience. The violence. Well, as cartoonish as it is, it's also inescapable. And even as the film uses that violence to needle mindless, violent games, it also renders Free Guy, despite its more thoughtful underpinnings, a potentially mindless, violent diversion. Crashing helicopters and blasting bazookas aside, Free Guy's world looks a lot like our own, both kind of fun and clearly fallen. And a little caution would be advised before diving right in. I went into Free Guy with relatively low expectations. I had an idea what to expect, so I just wanted some escapism for a few hours, but I was surprised just how much I enjoyed this film. It's essentially the Truman Show meets Ready Player One for the Fortnite generation, but it has enough fun ideas to make it stand out as a heartwarming comedy with no shortage of action scenes. Ryan Reynolds is his usual self, but it's hard to picture anyone but him playing the character of Guy, giving him an appealing wide-eyed naivete. Guy is an NPC, non-playable character, in a video game called Free City. He wakes up every morning doing the same routine but begins to feel that everything isn't what it seems, and his suspicions are confirmed when he puts on some sunglasses to see the world as it really is. If you're a fan of the John Carpenter classic They Live, you'll notice a few nods to it as well as many other Easter eggs and cameos. One day Guy sees the girl of his dreams with the username Molotov Girl, Jodie Comer, and she shows him that there is more to this world than he could have imagined. Keys, Joe Keery, and Millie, also Jodie Comer, are the two programmers who created Free City, and they want to try and get the code back from Antoine, take a Waitatai, who stole it from them. Keys and Millie are both immediately sympathetic, and Waitatai provides a few laughs, but you mostly want to punch him in the face after a short period of time. There were some innovative ideas, and the choreography in the fight scenes was impressive, as it actually looked like a video game brought to life. This is one time where I won't bitch about the CGI as it's set in a video game world, but the visual effects are impressive throughout. It's the kind of movie that benefits from multiple viewings due to all the little things going on in the background. Despite the generally light tone, there are themes of breaking free of the constraints of life and following your own path, so it manages to inspire as well as entertain. I need to put on that record that I hate that godforsaken Mariah Carey song, "Oh God, I hate it so much." It's still going through my head and won't leave me alone. Overall, Free Guy may not be an original concept, but it's nice to see a film that's bright and colorful with a positive message, but also has time to blow lots of stuff up while giving us some likable characters and humorous moments. You may not need to rush to the cinema to see it, but on a rainy Saturday afternoon I'd recommend checking it out, as it's the perfect cure for these dreary times. Guy lives in Free City. He has his routine down to a T. He wakes up, says good morning to his goldfish, grabs his shirt, watches the news, grabs his coffee, and then he walks to work at his favorite place in the world, the bank. Guy's occupation as a banker has its dangers though, as every day somebody comes in and yells, "Everybody get down on the ground." No one needs to be a hero. This will all be over soon. So Guy gets down behind the counter, as usual, with his best friend, a security guard named Buddy. Guy tells Buddy he wants more though. He's tired of the same routine, over and over again. As these two buds walk out of the bank, that's when Guy spots the love of his life walking down the street, Molotov Girl. After a very brief interaction with Molotov Girl, let's call her MG, she tells him that if Guy wants to spend any more time with her and help her with her mission, he must reach the same level she's at. He's a level 1 and she's at 153. Oh, wait. Did I forget to mention that Free City is actually a video game and Guy is an NPC, non-playable character, while MG is a player in the game. The person in the real world is a gamer named Millie. Guy, however, is unaware of all of this, as are all the NPCs in Free City. Okay, now that you have that. Millie/Molotov Girl needs Guy's help to retrieve information in the game that proves her and her friend Walter's original coding is in the game. In essence, the gaming company Tsunami twisted Millie and Walter's original game into something completely different. But there's a bigger problem on the horizon, and it'll take not just any guy, but a good guy to fix this bug. When the initial previews hit theaters a while back, I was actually really looking forward to Free Guy. After the disjointed, though well-intentioned, film Pixels came out in 2015, that paid homage to the retro video games, I was excited that we modern-day video gamers, yes, I'm an avid video gamer when I'm not teaching music full-time, were being given a film that would, yes, poke fun at the video game world, but also celebrate the milestones that have been made. Free Guy reminds me of the musical parody artist Weird Al Yankovic. Weird Al parodies famous songs, but when he does it both humor and respect. In many cases, the artists give him consent to use their music, even though he doesn't need it, and are honored he asks. The film Free Guy both honors and pokes fun at the whole video game community. The rules, the terminology, the avatars, the gameplay, everything. It made me wonder at one point, how did the video game community become the way it is? Free Guy isn't trying to reinvent anything or create anything new here, and I think that's okay. As other reviewers have mentioned, there are so many hidden Easter eggs, surprises, in the movie that only true gamers are going to notice. However, there is still plenty for those who aren't avid gamers. A fairly strong plot, apart from a few moments where the pacing is a bit slow. Additionally, there are some fine performances from many of the main characters, and some great cameos by some famous YouTubers and famous gamers. My biggest critique of this film, though, is the dialogue. Not simply because it is certainly off-color and suggestive at times, but also the conversations feel a bit awkward in some situations, particularly those involving the film's main antagonist, the head of Tsunami, Antoine, Taika Waititi. It's not out of the ordinary, so see comedians develop and then stick to their own routine. In many ways they are creatures of habit, and if they're able to tap into something that works, it makes sense they would stay with it. I think it's safe to say that Ryan Reynolds has found his shtick. The 44-year-old Canadian-born actor has dipped his toes into several other genres. But he seems to have found his home playing dim but endearing goofballs. Reynolds takes his shtick and cranks it up to 10 in his impossible-to-categorize new film Free Guy. On the surface, the Shawn Levy-directed action comedy looks like a kid-friendly romp and even plays like it at times. But a fairly steady stream of innuendo, profanity, half-baked virginity jokes, and an assortment of other crudities testify otherwise. Instead, the firmly PG-13 rated Free Guy is a gaming-inspired frolic that borrows from countless other movies, including The Lego Movie, The Matrix, Ready Player One, The Truman Show. There are even dashes of Back to the Future 2, Groundhog Day and Star Wars. It also yanks from numerous video games such as Grand Theft Auto, Fortnite, Portal, SimCity, and Tomb Raider. All of those nods, and trust me, there are many more, make watching the movie feel of a pop culture scavenger hunt which should thrill the Easter egg hunters out there. It also helps mask some of the film's nagging issues. Reynolds plays the movie's protagonist Guy, an NPC within a vast open-world video game. Now, for those not well versed in the gaming lexicon, NPC stands for non-player character. They're essentially background sims who fill out a game's world and are often fodder for the trigger-happy players. As the name suggests, they aren't controlled by players but are programmed to exist a certain way. Guy lives in Free City, an uber-violent Grand Theft Auto-styled video game where real-life players roam around wreaking havoc while the oblivious NPCs carry out their programmed routines. The overly jovial Guy is no different. His routine goes something like this: wake up happy and full of energy, put on the same powder blue shirt and khakis, stroll down to the coffee shop for his morning java, cream and 2 sugars, and then off to the bank where he works as a teller. At the end of the day or the end of life, whichever comes first, everything resets and Guy does it all over again. In the real world, Free City is an enormously popular online video game developed and maintained by Tsunami Games. The studio CEO Antoine, a ridiculously over-the-top Taika sees $signs in a sequel that would ostensibly end Guy and the virtual world he calls home. Meanwhile, a programmer named Millie, an eye-opening Jodie Comer, spends her time inside the virtual world of Free City in search of evidence that would prove that Antoine stole the code she created with keys. Joe Keery of Stranger Things, who now works for Antoine. Their game was going to be a pacifistic utopia where NPCs and players live in harmony, a far cry from what Antoine created. The two worlds collide when the wide-eyed and ever-content Guy crosses paths with Molotov Girl, Millie's in-game avatar. Suddenly the smitten NPC steps out of his programming, joining Millie in her effort to expose Antoine. Guy's exploits grab the gaming community's attention and his sudden real-world fanbase watches for what he's going to do next. And everyone, including an irate Antoine, begin wondering who the player is behind this blue-shirt Guy, completely unaware that he's actually an NPC turned groundbreaking artificial intelligence. Levy along with co-writers Matt Lieberman and Zach Penn infuse Free Guy with a playful chaos and they zip through their story at a breakneck pace with practically no downtime. But if you aren't able to stay on the film's manic and quirky wavelength, there's a good chance of it wearing you down. And no matter how much it stuffs into its nearly 2-hour frame, if you aren't 100% on board you may start checking your watch at the 90-minute mark like I did. Gamers will have a lot of fun finding all of the references aimed specifically at them. Terms like backwards compatibility, leveling up, teabagging, multiplayer lobbies, and so on. They even paid some well-known video game streamers to appear as themselves. Their scenes happen to be some of the falsest moments in the film, but they're aimed at gamers nonetheless. Free Guy is jam-packed with gags, some that land, many that don't. Interestingly, it's the more subtle jokes that work best. For example, I love how Guy has such a perfectly generic name. And his best friend, a wonderfully warm Lil Rel Howery, is fittingly named Buddy. But there are just as many dated out-of-touch yawners that land with a thud. And I have to get back to Waidatai as the film's incredibly hammy villain. His act is alright for a few scenes, but it's so outrageous that it's impossible to take him seriously even when the story needs us to. Despite its frustrations, Free Guy also has several strengths. Burrowed deep down in all of the silliness is a really good message about individuality and wanting more out of life. Even better, the movie features what should be a breakout performance from Jodie Comer. And there's one particularly incredible cameo that I won't dare spoil, you'll know it when you see it. Unfortunately, the good doesn't fully outweigh the bad. It just evens things out a bit. And while it has an undeniably bright and cheery exterior, underneath is little more than a fairly standard and borderline exhausting blockbuster. Free Guy is now showing in theaters. Video games movies have a spotty history at best. 1993's Super Mario Bros., Street Fighter, the only film to this day that I ever walked out on, all the Tomb Raider movies, and even the recent Sonic the Hedgehog film all would have been better off remaining as video games in my opinion. Luckily for us, Shawn Levy's latest film Free Guy, while set around a video game world, is not a video game movie. What we get instead is a rom-com action film that is endlessly creative, funny, sweet, thrilling and so packed with detail you'll want to play again and again. Free Guy is actually a movie about a guy named Guy, Ryan Reynolds. He lives in Free City, a wild and exciting place where action is always just a step away. Let's just say Guy has a routine. He starts each day by saying good morning to his goldfish, Goldie. He watches the same news while eating the same cereal. He even puts on the same outfit every day, consisting of a very nondescript blue button-down shirt and khakis. Then, on the way to work, he picks up a hot coffee, 2 creams, 2 sugars, every day. Then it is off to his bank teller job, where, of course, several times a day he gets robbed. Yep, you read that right. Oh, I should have mentioned that guy lives in a video game, an MMORPG to be exact. He is your typical NPC, non-playable character, which means he is essentially a background character who is not supposed to have free will or even much of a personality besides what he is programmed to do and say. His main line is "Don't have a good day, have a great day." He is just one of hundreds of NPCs that roam the streets of Free City while characters controlled by real humans run amok doing whatever they please. This usually consists of robbing, killing, or blowing stuff up, all of which earn them points in the game to level up. Guy, like NPCs, lived happily within his routine, never really questioning it. That is until one day when everything changes after seeing the woman of his dreams walking through the video game streets of Free City. Her name, which he learns later, is Molotov Girl. She's a playable character controlled by Millie, Jodie Comer, a game programmer who is on a mission of her own in Free City. She is not there to play and level up, but rather to find proof that the pompous Free City programmer Antoine, take a Waitatai, built the game world off technology stolen from her and her partner's keys, Jokiri, concept. Once Guy crosses paths with Millie, everything changes for him. Whoever she is, Guy falls hard for her and will do anything to get her attention. Suddenly he is demonstrating, although he doesn't know it, free will, something he never had before. It leads to him making some less than expected and entertaining choices that lead to him literally seeing his world in a whole new way, thanks to a pair of sunglasses. Not only does he see the world differently, he can interact with it in ways he never could before. His new powers set off a string of entertaining events that make for one of the most enjoyable rides of the year. I will admit, that is a lot of setup, but the film has a high concept that may need some explaining for non-gamers. And that is who I want to target with this review, the non-gamers. Do not be turned off by premise. Sure, it is set in a video game world, but there's much more to this existential action comedy to make it worth watching for a pretty wide audience. It's clever, funny, and packed with ingenuity. With qualities of Groundhog Day, The Truman Show, Wreck-It Ralph, and a hint of Elf, this film aims to, and succeeds at, delivering a crowd pleaser. We pop back and forth between Guy's VR video game world and the real-world life of Millie and Keys in 2 connected but separate storylines. Surprisingly, neither weighs the other down. Levy finds a balance, making both equally satisfying to watch while avoiding ever becoming too confusing. Matt Lieberman and Zach Penn's script always keeps things moving. There's not a second to be bored, from the action scenes to the constant humor and including a little romance, which I found delightful, predictable, but delightful. The main reason Levy is able to pull it off without falling into the traps so many have before can be summed up in 2 words: Ryan Reynolds. This is probably the most Ryan Reynolds-ish role of his career, even more so than Deadpool. He has charm, more charm, and charm to spare, which he puts it on full display. But this time there's a touch of childlike wonder watching Guy trying to make sense of his new perspective on this crazy video game world. It leads to a lot of vicarious fun as Guy serves as the audience's avatar, acting out in curious ways that pull you right into the film. It is a blast to watch, and I can't imagine anyone else in the role. The more Guy, or Blue Shirt Guy as he becomes known, acts out in less than expected ways, the more he levels up, causing a ripple effect in the game. Eventually, he catches the attention of the gaming community, the media, and the greedy and eccentric owner of Free City. I'll spare the details, but a bigger, world-crossing adventure ensues that you can experience for yourself. It may seem like I gave away too much here, but there's so much more to cover. The film almost effortlessly packs in a lot of entertainment and takes us on so many adventures that you'll have a ton more to explore for yourself in this sandbox. The world building is absolutely incredible. Once in Free City, it feels like a new world. You really are transported into a game world. It is big, loud, colorful, and full of endless visual treats to take in. So much so that his film will certainly keep viewers busy as they watch for the Easter eggs and ambient humor missed while focused on the story. Gamers will definitely get more out of the incredible detail incorporated here, but even noobs will get a kick out of it all. Too many directors when given access to CGI show little or no restraint. Levy goes nuts here, but it is rarely distracting and almost always takes a backseat to the story, which is nice to see. In addition to Reynolds, the cast does some impressive work here. Comer is more than a worthy match for Reynolds. She brings a lot to the table, making Millie endearing, funny, and she kicks some ass along the way. If you have not seen her at work in Killing Eve, add the sexy Killer series to your watch list. Her chemistry with Reynolds makes each scene, especially the ones that could have felt out of place, land some direct hits. As Guy's security guard best friend, Lil Rel Howery delivers some of the film's funniest lines and is not the one-dimensional sidekick you may expect. Carey brings with him an every guy feel that works well as the straight guy. Waitai, while funny at times, is a little hammy and one note for my taste. There is also a slew of cameos from YouTube gamer influencers that had my 13-year-old daughter smiling to some bigger names and IP that will certainly delight audiences. When it comes down to it, Levy delivers surprisingly more depth than expected. The themes at play are familiar but handled with a fresh enough approach to keep viewers engaged. Though it doesn't always pull off everything it aims to. The results diminish slightly after the world exploration subsides and shifts more toward trope territory. Plus, there were a couple of jokes that did not quite click for me. Honestly, that may be nitpicking. I didn't mind these small stumbles since there is so much more to please. I was having a blast with the colorful environment, self-aware humor, and wild action from beginning to end. And, while surrounded with wall-to-wall effects, the biggest accomplishment is delivering characters we really care about. It could have been just another special effects reel with a spatter of jokes. It is not that in the least. It is the story-first approach that gives the film a classic 80s/90s vibe, which should lead to a lot of replay value. I expect to revisit Free City again soon and plenty of times after. If you are expecting the film to change your life, probably go elsewhere. If you are looking for a great time, grab your pocket full of quarters and jump into the fun. Free Guy is like a hyperactive puppy. It really wants to be your friend. It's easy to like and fun to hang out with. It also has a habit of running around in circles, losing its focus, and shitting on the floor. A family action movie that targets the Fortnite generation, Free Guy also preaches the importance of individuality while not only feeling like a dozen other movies but literally incorporating some of their imagery. An enjoyable cast, including movie-stealing work from Jodie Comer, holds it all together, but one can still see just enough glitches in this matrix to wish it was better. With a setup that feels distinctly like that of the Lego Movie, Free Guy introduces us to the very likable guy, Ryan Reynolds, an NPC, non-player character, in a wildly successful open-world video game called Free City. He wears the same outfit every day, orders the same coffee, and goes to work at the same bank, which gets robbed multiple times a day by actual players in this Grand Theft Auto-esque game. He doesn't care. Everything is awesome for Guy and his best pal buddy, Lil Rel Howery, until the cheery fella spots a real player who goes by the handle Molotov Girl, Comer, and breaks his pattern, following the captivating woman down the street. As he becomes more interested in Molotov Girl and where she might be going, he gets his hands on a pair of sunglasses that reveal what the actual players see in this world, including missions, medikits, hubs, and other things that will be familiar to modern gamers, even if some of the tech here already looks dated. Note, it was a brilliant move to incorporate actual gamers and streamers like Ninja, Pokimane, and DanTDM, cameos that will have kids who know those personalities jumping out of their seats. Back in the real world, we learn that Molotov Girl is a programmer named Millie, who used to work with another tech genius named Keys, Jodie, on the development of a truly ambitious virtual game, one that would replicate the actual world instead of just giving gamers violent missions to perform. She's in Free City trying to find evidence that the game's egocentric publisher Antoine, take a Waititi, stole her code and deformed it into this bland experience when Guy proves to be the perfect inside man. The Trinity to his Neo, the two form an alliance to basically break Free City apart from the inside, starting with Guy's refusal to raise his rank through violence. Guy chooses only the positive missions in the game, and becomes an internet success in the process as the world tries to figure out who this mysterious gamer might be, without realizing that he's actually the most remarkable breakthrough in artificial intelligence in history. As Millie and Keys discover what has been created here, they endeavor to save true advancement from brash capitalism. Director Shawn Levy does an admirable job of keeping Free Guy clicking and humming through several entertaining scenes in the first half, including a great montage of Guy's good missions and a funny sequence in which Keys and his programming partner Mauser, Utkarsh Ambedkar, go after Guy, but he really starts to lose the pace around the hour mark, circling back to a lot of the same plot points and themes. Rather than developing its own personality, the film struggles to shake the clear influence of other projects like The Matrix, Ready Player One, and even The Truman Show, while also dropping in actual gaming and pop culture references with increasing regularity. The film's best moments embrace the potential of this concept, its worst seem to be mimicking better projects. Levy also keeps the strongest parts of Free Guy moving by drawing out the natural charisma of his cast. Reynolds can do this kind of charming action hero in his sleep, but Comer is a real breakthrough, charismatically holding together both the action-driven scenes as Molotov Girl and the more character-driven ones as Millie. She's easily the best thing about the film, although it's nice to see the affable Jodie get his best movie role to date too. Sadly, both cede a bit too much screen time to an overplaying Waititi in the second half of the movie, who hits the same unfunny beats over and over again and ends up feeling more cartoonish than the actual NPCs. Every time that Free Guy threatens to become numbingly monotonous, a decision by writers Matt Lieberman and Zach Penn, or one by Comer or Reynolds, brings it back into focus. Free Guy is more disposable than it should have been, but it's a pleasant enough distraction. Gamers often turn to virtual worlds to escape their own. It's fun to see the journey taken in the other direction. As such, Free Guy is taking a big chance. It's a takedown of modern video games that ends up concluding that video games would be better if they were more like documentary movies, wouldn't they? I wonder how well that will go down with its target audience, or will it just go over their heads? Or am I misjudging those viewers, all raised on Fortnite, who might even agree? Free Guy takes as its basis the likes of The Truman Show, 1998, The Lego Movie, 2014, and Tron to give us ordinary Guy, Ryan Reynolds, a bank worker who lives in Free City, a town divided between those with really exciting lives, the sunglasses wearers, who are always zooming around at high speed, shooting things, ignoring the law and generally having fun, and the regular people, who all seem to do the same things day after day after day, often getting killed in the process, only to be reborn again the next day. Little does he know, he's only a character in a video game and those people in sunglasses are the players. But one day, he spots sunglasses wearer Jodie Comer, killing Eve, and realizes she's the one. Inspired, he changes his narrative and follows her. Then, when he acquires a pair of sunglasses himself, he learns the true nature of the world and decides to advance up the levels of the game to win her over. Nevertheless, he's still only a character in a video game run by the evil Take-A-Waititi, Green Lantern, Jojo Rabbit. So can Guy ever truly be free? I'll admit that all I know about video games comes from playing Gardenscapes and Marvel Strike Force on my phone and general cultural osmosis. But Free Guy felt, to me at least, every bit as incisive as Tron, 1982, was about early arcade games. Boss Level, 2021, about 90s games. And Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle, 2017, was about games of the 00s. Its first couple of acts are very funny digs at modern video games, particularly GTA, their storylines, their jargon, and the various methods games designers use to provide players with challenges. Leveling up, skins, power up, med packs, God mode and other bits of game slang make their way into the movie's lexicon, with the firm expectation that the audience will know what they all mean, and are used accurately, as well. It is very funny to watch Reynolds start as a games noob, as he works his way up through the levels, learning how to deal with adversaries, yet also treating it all deadly seriously. He's not going to murder anyone, NPC or PC, because they're people, damn it, and you just don't go around murdering people. That incisiveness actually gets more acute and funnier once Waitatai arrives. I'm not exactly sure he's acting, it feels more like he did a physical, motion capture performance for his own body and then dubbed his lines on afterwards, but in conjunction with a script that understands the nature of brainstorming and the difficulty of creativity, the movie's final act does provide plenty of laughs from a character who understands money better than he understands dialogue and good design. All in all, it impressed me with its accuracy and didn't feel, as perhaps Free Boss did, that it was homaging games the writers knew from their childhoods. This felt like modern games getting told they might want to try to developing their characters, revising their sexist attitudes and generally avoiding the same old, and sequelitis. Ronnie Callie, given the movie's message, what it didn't really get was people, gamers, that is, IMHO. For the most part, the players depicted are clichés, teenage boys and young men who masturbate into the socks. I'm sure there's a percentage, perhaps even a large one, of games players like that, but it's not representative of the gamers I know. Equally, I'm as prone to getting a little excited about Ryan Reynolds as anyone, so maybe another aspect of it is more accurate than I'd like to admit. But the only female gamers shown in the movie don't really do much or have much to say, beyond getting excited about the romance between Comer and Reynolds and how much they fancy Guy. Nerdy women and our interests might have become mainstream in other areas of the media, but it seems like movies haven't really taken in the changed nature of female fandom since Galaxy Quest, 1999, first acknowledged our existence. The movie's biggest failing is also its biggest irony. Jodie Comer is little more than an NPC in Free Guy. For all the movie's pleading with its audience to consider the thoughts and feelings of others who might get overlooked, that really doesn't extend to women, since as with the female gamers in the movie, Free Guy's main female character has very little to do. Comer's Molotov girl is the Flynn of what is really Tron from Crom's point of view, being a user hunting for proof her programming IP has been stolen. She should therefore be a goddess among the movie's mortals. I still haven't gone to the cinema through the whole pandemic and have no plans to anytime soon, but, man, we're so missing going to new movies. The last thing we all saw in the cinema together, me, hubby and kid, was Onward, which was a meh one to end on. So we decided to end the summer school break with a trip to a drive-in. I was very lucky growing up as there was a great drive-in not far from my tiny American Midwest town, with great pizza, but I know it's a novelty in the UK. They do outdoor showings of older movies here sometimes, saw The Greatest Showman that way, but, seriously, who wants to sit outdoors in shitty UK weather? Too risky in rainy England. So it's cool that some small drive-ins have popped up during the pandemic. And it didn't even rain during Free Guy. Yay. They just need to start doing double features, that's what it always was at the one in America. And it was cheap, too, but it was the 80s/90s, so I'm sure the cost has gone up. At £30 a car here, it's good for a couple of trips, but we can't do that regularly. Was worth the cost to see one movie in a year and a half, though. Anyway. Enough reminiscing about my high school drive-in days. I was so annoyed with my boyfriend wanting to make out the whole time, I wanted to watch the damn movies. Suppose I should talk about Free Guy? I probably enjoyed it slightly more than I might have, as I needed a movie fix so bad, but I thought it was a lot of fun. I even giggled a few times. I'm not a LOL person. Ryan Reynolds is always likable, of course, but I also really liked Jodie Comer's character. She's also more than just the love interest, her role is as big and as important as Ryan's. The idea itself was good, but, admittedly, not the most original. We've seen the whole living in a video game thing quite a lot. But this movie brought enough of a new spin to the idea, plus the romance was surprisingly good, especially at the end. It managed to be slightly unpredictable, which was cool. Ryan and Jodie are the characters we see the most by far, but there were some really good smaller roles too. I can't say much as I want to avoid spoilers, but dude was the best. That's what got the most giggles out of me, but I'm a little immature. Also liked Ryan's best friend, and that guy from Stranger Things wasn't too bad despite his always weird hair. And Taika Waititi was as entertaining as always, playing an evil game developer. Plus there are several cameos that I won't spoil. Yeah, it was lightweight entertainment, but that's exactly what we all needed. Scary that it's going to end up pretty high on my list of 2021 UK releases. But I can't see absolutely loving many of the upcoming 2021 films. Let's see how Dune turns out. It feels like I have been waiting for Free Guy for so long, and, in a way, I have. The first trailer was released back in 2019, then its theatrical release was delayed again and again due to the COVID-19 pandemic until it was finally released in the summer of 2021. And now it has finally been released on Disney Plus in select regions. I actually always enjoyed the trailers, but, I must admit that, a small part of me was trepidatious about the film because I worried that I would have the same problems with Free Guy that I had with Ready Player One. But even though Free Guy does have plenty of references, I never thought it was as overwhelming as I thought the aforementioned modern Spielberg dystopian action film was. I quite enjoyed this movie, warts and all. Shawn Levy's Free Guy primarily follows Guy, played by Ryan Reynolds, a bank teller and non-playable character inside of an online video game world, as he slowly learns that his world isn't real. He is taken on this journey after he becomes smitten by the player known as Molotov Girl, played by Jodie Comer, who is on her own mission inside of the game. Molotov Girl, whose real name is Millie, is looking for data inside of the video game which may prove that the game's developer has stolen, distorted, and repurposed her original video game idea. As the video game developer, Antoine, played by Taika Waititi, slowly starts to realize exactly what is going on, Guy will have to fight for his own existence. Free Guy is an interesting kind of film. While it is a film about a video game world where players can use gadgets and whatnot from various famous video games or other properties, the film is, at its heart, about an independent video game designer that is fighting against a giant corporation, which has swallowed her original idea. I love the intent of the story. I think it is nice to see stories about underdogs that are going up against conglomerates, and I like how a lot of this story is executed, which surprised me a little, since the marketing mostly focused on Ryan Reynolds' character. But I also think this is a case where the central message got muddled by the sudden use of pop culture reference in the last act of the film. There certainly is a lot of reference humor and cheap excitement as a result of borrowing other films' gadgets and theme music, but not all of it is earned, and, I guess that, some of the reference humor will eventually make the comedy feel quite dated. On top of that, I know that one of the easiest criticisms to lob at this film is that it is unoriginal. It is, at least to some extent. It is borrowing a lot, conceptually, from The Matrix or The Truman Show, or even the Lego Movie, and I think it would be silly to try to argue against that. The video game references are exactly as obvious. But I have to say that I like the concepts in this film, and, while there certainly are visual references to other films, I didn't feel bombarded with the kind of visual reference noise that Ready Player One, which I thought cheapened one of my favorite films, overwhelmed me with. Free Guy never made me feel that kind of numbness. In fact, I was often quite charmed by this movie. It is just a funny and lightweight action comedy when the film rests on Ryan Reynolds' capable comedic chops, and it is almost as good when it deals with the real-world subplot, which I thought was a nice surprise. I will say, though, that it is a shame that Taika Waititi, who delivers a slightly grating performance, is in a completely different movie than Reynolds, Comer, and Jodie. Shawn Levy's Free Guy is very unoriginal, its inspirations are extremely obvious, and even though the story is essentially in favor of independent art, the filmmakers couldn't pass up the opportunity to pick and choose gadgets from some of the most celebrated IPs and sequels in films and video games, which means the film is a little bit at odds with itself. But, honestly, the film still won me over thanks in large part to the story, the tone, and the fact that Ryan Reynolds, who I always greatly enjoy, is used perfectly without ever overwhelming the subplot that puts the, though not unknown, not so household names into the spotlight. I think this is a charming and rather inoffensive comedy that the entire family can enjoy. Over the years, Hollywood has produced and struggled with the idea of translating a popular video game franchise into a lucrative and entertaining cinematic endeavor. From game to screen, the translation of this has eluded many in feature films and what becomes pantomime parody of some kind by trying to cater to both the casual moviegoer and the gamer fan. The results have always been mixed, with many projects seeing mediocre results, never truly striking gold with critics, viewers, and box office numbers alike. Whether it's from bad directing, a flat presentation, a bland story, terrible scripts handling, poor execution, over-the-top acting, and weak characters, its numerous points of criticisms can fall and weigh heavily on the likability of the film's adaptations. This includes Mortal Kombat, the 1995, 1997, and 2021 version, 1993's Super Mario Bros., 2001's Final Fantasy, The Spirits Within, 2007's Hitman, 2009's Street Fighter, The Legend of Chun-Li, 2016's Assassin's Creed, 2016's The Angry Birds movie, just to name a few. However, there have been a few exceptions to this, finding some feature films to rise above the mediocrity level of a video game movie, including like 2012's Wreck-It Ralph, 2018's Ready Player One, and 2019's Sonic the Hedgehog, among several others. Now, 20th Century Fox and director Shawn Levy presents the latest offering of a video game movie with the release of Free Guy. Does the movie rise to challenge of being number one in this cinematic arena, or is it too derivate and simplistic that it falls prey to filmmaking conventions? Guy, Ryan Reynolds, is a friendly non-playable character in the popular online game Free City, going about his business in the same routine every day with a pleasant and cheerful disposition towards the violent and havoc events that happen around. He also enjoys his time as a bank teller, working with his friendly pal, security guard buddy, Lil Rel Howery, to pass the time. Tearing through the city streets are the infamous Sunglasses People, who are actually the players in the game, with one in particular, Molotov Girl, Jodie Comer, catching Guy's fancy, inspiring him to acquire the eyewear that allows him to participate in the antics of a player in Free City's landscape. Experiencing an overwhelming education on how the game is actually played and how to level up, Guy works hard to impress Molotov Girl, who's actually Millie Rusk in the real world, a game designer that once partnered with Walter Keys McKees, Jodie, to create a special virtual world, only to have their code stolen by the devious/zany mogul business owner of Tsunami Games named Antoine, Taika Waititi, who turned their surreal project into what became Free City. Trying to acquire evidence of this theft, Millie makes her way deep into Free City's underbelly, soon joined by Guy, whose newfound liberation has turned him into an online celebrity amongst players across the web. However, to reach her goal, Millie soon finds out that she needs Guy's unique ability to help her secure what she claims, but uncovering the truth of Guy's free will existence might just her undoing, placing her, Guy, and Walter on a collision course that will change everything. It comes as no surprise that I like both movies and video games, with the marriage between the two being something of an interest for me. While I'm more of a movie/film aficionado, I'm actually more of just a casual gamer. Not saying there is nothing wrong with those hardcore gamers out there, but I can only play a video game for like half hour or 45 minutes. Maybe an hour if I'm trying to get past a level/mission before I lose interest and want to do something else to pass the time. Anyway, back to the main point of this paragraph, video game movies have more of a curse than a blessing, with result being a somewhat mixed to bad reception, finding most to be difficultly in bridging a proper medium between video game and movie. Of course, there has been some that have been entertaining, such as some of my personal favorite ones like Sonic the Hedgehog, Wreck-It Ralph, and Tomb Raider, but then there are some that are just plain bad like Mortal Kombat Annihilation, although one scene in the movie I like, and almost completely unrecognizable to its source material like 1993's Super Mario Bros., something that put a nail in the coffin from Nintendo in translating their games into feature films. Another problem of video game adaptations are in its appeal to the masses versus its fan base, collectively creating problems to a more singular grouping of viewers out there that might not cater to the general moviegoer populace. Prime example of this problem can be found in Final Fantasy VII, Advent Children or Warcraft. Both are good movies, in my opinion, but feel more dedicated to its fan base rather than general viewers. Still, for better or worse, adapting popular video games into movies is something that Hollywood isn't going to stop anytime soon, aiming to one day claim to break the so-called video game movie curse. This, of course, brings me back around to talking about Free Guy, a 2021 action-adventure comedy feature film and the latest offering from the video game movie veins. I think it was a while back when I first heard about this project, with director Shawn Levy being attached to a movie about an online video game setting. It was all a bit vague as it was in the early stages of development. After that, I do remember hearing that actor Reynolds was signed onto the movie in the lead role, which, like many, gained my interest. Sometime after that, I saw the film's first movie trailer, which I believe that was attached to the theatrical release of Star Wars, Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker, with the upcoming being promoted for a July 3, 2020. However, due to the shuttering effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, Free Guy was delayed and pushed several times, including a December 11, 2020, release and a May 21, 2021 release before it was finally confirmed to be theatrical released on August 13, 2021. While that movie was released on my birthday, I decided to wait a week to see the movie as I was busy with work and celebrating my birthday weekend. So, I saw Free Guy the following week, but then, like the movie delayed releases, I decided to push back doing my review for the film, for, again, I was busy with work and with my upcoming vacation. I wanted to get some other movies of 2021 completed. Thankfully, I did and now have some spare time to share my thoughts on Free Guy. And what did I think of it? To me, I really liked the movie. Despite the abundance of familiarity, Free Guy was great and entertaining action comedy that delivered on its fun premise and video game aesthetics. It does come close to being my favorite video game movie endeavor, and that's good thing and think many will agree on that. Free Guy is directed by Shawn Levy, whose previous directorial works include The Night at the Museum trilogy, 2006 to 2014, as well as The Internship and Date Night. Given his background of directing feature films that stray to the more comedic genre, Levy seems like a suitable choice for helm a project like Free Guy, approaching the film with a great sense of comedy and video game nuances to make the feature revel in its zany and boisterous tale of a self-aware NPC character. To that end, Levy definitely succeeds, brightening the movie with plenty of eye-popping visual candy throughout the feature that are reminiscent of video games as well as narrative that has a good proportionate balance between its action and comedy. On the latter point, Levy is good at, especially in the comedic aspect, finding Free Guy to have a lot more laughs than other comedy movies of 2021. This is where the movie excels and plays to Levy's strengths, given the director's background, with Free Guy having a ton of humorous moments of one-liner jokes, rapid-fire banter, and physical sight gags. Naturally, some of the best parts of the movie is during the first half, with the juxtaposition of chaotic/rampaging scenes happening in Free City against the normalcy of the NPC characters going about their daily routine business. Plus, the film's comedy hits a lot more of its targets than misses, which makes for those moments to pure enjoyment rather than cringe-worthy. In the video game aspect, Levy does make a grandiose gesture to the gamers out there in the movie, and I think he does a good job, shaping Free Guy to have plenty of Easter egg-like cameo, callbacks, and references to popular video games of recent such as Cyberpunk 2077, Grand Theft Auto, Fortnite, and World of Warcraft, just to name a few. This makes the film's realization of Free City, the film's online video game realm, feel both familiar and creatively fun to watch, with Levy staging scenes and events throughout the movie in a well-timed manner. This also provides plenty of video game-esque action sequences that are utilized to create some fun and entertaining blockbuster style, with Levy playing around with the commonplace tropes of open-world gaming, including chaotic action, a large inventory of weapons/tools at a player's disposal, the interacting of both players and non-playable characters alike, and the almost Wild West aspect that the online open-world video game that makes up Free City, just to name a few. It's these moments that also shine through in the movie, finding Levy's direction fun and embracing those gaming nuances in an entertaining way. Also, I felt that Levy makes the film light and breezy within all of its various aspects, especially with the movie having a runtime of 115 minutes, 1 hour and 55 minutes. Thus, Free Guy feels more enjoyable and doesn't get entangled within unnecessary subplots or going off on unwanted tangents, with Levy keeping his camera's lens focus on the task at hand. The story of Free Guy is one of familiarity and breeds some predictable notions, more on that below, but I think that was intention behind this movie, drumming up ideas and scenarios that were utilized, or at the very least that play on the video game/online adventure premise, but with the movie putting its own spin on those tropes. The idea of an NPC character breaking free of the constraint of what he's always done, day after day, and seeing him interact with players is something hilarious to see, and the movie puts that notion front and center, especially in the first half of the feature. In this regard, I think that the film does succeed and certainly showcases that notion. Interestingly, the film's script also touches upon some themes throughout Free Guy, especially ones that touch upon corporate greed and how the industry is more invested in churning out sequels rather than generating something new or original. It's definitely a poignant one, as this can translate into many various facets that are not just out online video game. In the presentation category, Free Guy is a solid endeavor, utilizing the heavy CGI visual effects shots and sequences smartly to build the feature's background setting throughout the movie. This is the primary case with the film's main setting of Free City, which showcases the classic urban city landscape, which is amped up with colorful/flashy video game aesthetics and aspects. Everything looks slick and visual fun to watch, which makes the background setting compelling to view throughout the feature. So, it goes without saying that Free Guys is a visually movie, and its color palette and other flashy nuances keep a viewer's eyes glued, dazzling with blockbuster flair. Naturally, the other important pieces of a filmmaking help bolster the movie's setting, including the behind-the-scenes team like Steve Cooper and Beat Frucher, art direction, Ethan Taubman, production design, Kimberly Leonard and Leslie E. Rollins, set decorations, and Marlene Stewart, costume designs, which are all represented well. Additionally, what also helps the film's visual setting is the cinematography work by George Richmond, which definitely adds a lens of dramatic for some of the film's more unique and cinematic moments. Lastly, the film's score, which was composed by Christopher Beck, is a solid one, finding the movie's musical composition fitting for the feature's story it is telling, be it quiet character scenes or loud action sequences. There are problems that I noticed that Free Guy can't overcome and lessen the film's creativity ways in how it presents its narrative, characters, and film altogether. What I immediately noticed about the movie is how similar the film is with other feature movies out there that dealt with video game worlds and / or online presence on the World Wide Web. How so? Well, as the movie's story slowly unfolds, Free Guy travels down a very familiar path that has been somewhat done before in several other feature film endeavors, including Wreck-It Ralph, Ralph Breaks the Internet, and Ready Player One. It's not a complete deal breaker, as I kind of expected this, especially given the premise of Free Guy's story. Still, the film's script does fall prey to some of those recycled ideas and scenarios from those previous video game / online scenarios, which causes a lot of familiarity and predictable plot points that follow. This includes a programmed character going against parameters, the discovery of what a player can do, the events that takes place in the real world, and a climactic battle where the entire world is watching. Just to name a few. It's clear of where the movie's narrative will go, and it's easy to see how it all be resolved before it actually happens. Thus, there is a touch of formulaic notion that permeates the entire film. That being said, I sort of knew that it was going to be like this, but it would have been beneficial if the film's script was a bit more refined and push away from those similar style feature film narratives. Maybe a deeper understanding of its theme, online video gaming, or creative notions. They're all present in the movie, but not fully. Additionally, the movie does fall prey to a few more nuances aspect, which the movie struggles to shake off. One such aspect is in the latte half of the feature, with large emphasis on the real-world setting / characters as the film's story begins to reach its climax. In truth, the stuff that happens in the real world is that quite compelling. Yes, there is a lot of important stuff that goes on and does affect that outcome in Free City, but neither Levy's direction nor the feature's script makes the real-world scenes that compelling. I think that there could have been more substance in the area and almost had a better blend of the real world and the game world, like what Ready Player One was able to achieve. That's more of a minor criticisms. Also, I felt that the back half of Free Guy struggles and gets weighed down a bit within its own machinations. What's presented works and I do like it, but I felt that there could have been something a bit more. More action, more stakes, more elements from the MMO fanfare. There's just something of that special it factor that Levy doesn't quite capture correctly, resulting in a few missteps throughout Free Guy's second half. The cast in Free Guy is relatively small, the main players of the film, but that doesn't mean the acting talents selected for these particular characters aren't effective. Quite the contrary, the cast is solid across the board, with all given some type of character performances in their respective roles. The only downside is that some of the real-world elements, as I mentioned above, don't translate quite well into character build time. Leading the charge in the movie, and headline the feature, is actor Ryan Reynolds, who plays the film's protagonist hero character, Guy. Reynolds, who is known for his roles in Deadpool, The Proposal, and Buried, has certainly had his difficulties with movies, with some defining his acting career, while others have completely missed their marks. Personally, I think it all depends upon the material that Reynolds is given for the role and how his character is portrayed throughout the film's narrative. Luckily, Reynolds' involvement in Free Guy is definitely one of his better roles in his career, especially with some of his more recent endeavors, makes for such a fun and naively charming character as Guy, a lovable / yet optimistic non-player character in Free City. Reynolds isn't snarky or super crass like in Deadpool or The Hitman's Wife's Bodyguard, but plays up his more likable charisma and joyful screen presence in Free Guy, which is clearly represented in him playing Guy, who is sweetly naive, yet still grows to be a compelling and endearing character to root for in his journey. Thus, it goes without saying that the movie's likability rests on Reynolds' shoulders, which the actor holds up firmly with pride, charming his way throughout the entire film and seems to be having a blast in the role. Overall, I think behind Reynolds' Guy, actress Jodie Comer comes as a close second in the most screen time in Free Guy, playing the dual character role of Molotov Girl in Free City and Millie in the real world. Comer, who is known for her roles in Killing Eve, The White Princess, and The Last Duel, does a terrific job in playing the role of Molotov Girl, who acts as the classic badass femme fatale action heroine character. It's fun and easy to see that Comer is having a blast in this role. Plus, her and Reynolds share some good on-screen chemistry with each other, projecting the right amount of witty back and forth banter every now and again, which is fun to watch. Comer's real-world counterpart character of Millie is a bit more straightforward and a tad conventional. That's not to say that Comer doesn't play the role effectively well as she does, but it's something a bit formulaic and not quite as strong as Molotov Girl, visually or well-rounded. Still, regardless of that, I think that Comer was terrific in the movie and playing two very distinct character roles in the film. Behind her, actor Joe Keery, Stranger Things and After Everything, plays the character of Walter Keys McKeys, Millie's fellow co-creator of a program that was stolen from Tsunami Games. Like Comer's Millie, the character of Keys fits into the real-world scenes and is played up a bit too straightforward as the daring young person who battles against the devious CEO owner. Again, that didn't bother me as much, but I felt that there could have been more depth into his character. Still, I think that Keery was good in the role and, given with the material that he was given, help elevate the character of Keys from what was presented on the film's script. In truth, the most memorable real-world character in the movie would have to be the character of Antoine, the flashy and cookie CEO owner of Tsunami Games. Played by actor/director Taika Waititi, Thor, Ragnarok and Jojo Rabbit, Antoine is humorous because quite eccentric in the movie, with Waititi fully embraces that idea within his performances, including his goofy costume attires outfits, zippy one-liners, and just an all-round solid/committed performance. The character itself is a bit cliched at times, with Antoine become just another big bad character who doesn't care about the creative process and more interested money. Although, I kind of figured that going into the movie, so it didn't bother me as much. Regardless of that, I think that Waititi was great in the role of Antoine and was probably the best real world in Free Guy solely based on his wacky performance. Good job Waititi. With a vast majority of the film focusing primarily on these players, heroes and villains, Free Guy doesn't exactly have a whole lot of supporting players. The only exception of this comes in the form of two characters, with one being the character of Buddy, a bank security guard in Free City/best friend to Guy and who is played by actor Lil Rel Howery, Uncle Drew and Get Out, and the other being Mauser, a programmer at Tsunami/friend to Keys and who is played by actor Utkarsh Ambedkar, Pitch Perfect and Brittany Runs a Marathon. Both characters are created for amusement/one-line zingers here and there, which, given the comedic atmospheric nature of the film's identity, seems appropriate, while the acting talents of Howery and Ambedkar are good respectfully. Nothing to complain about their characters nor their performances. The rest of the supporting players in the movie are made up of a lot of fun and interesting cameo-like appearances from celebrities. Some are recognizable, while others are downright hidden. There is a ton of these scattered throughout the movie and it's kind of fun, when you do figure who is in this movie, of their involvement in Free Guy. I won't spoil as that would ruin it the fun of trying figure out those cameos, but just be on the lookout for throughout the movie. The world needed a hero, and we got Guy. The tale of video game NPC's liberation from his set path and discovering the life of a player becomes much more than intricate and important to the future of artificial intelligence in the movie Free Guy. Director Shawn Levy's latest film takes the setting of an online video game arena and combines that aspect with the comedic charm of romantic comedy and a blockbuster, concocting something that is fun and entertaining. While the movie does struggle slightly in its narrative layer, predictable and formulaic, as well as a few minor nitpicks, the film still rises above the rip-off variant degree and becomes something more unique, thanks to Levy's direction, the aesthetics of the video game realm, a solid presentation, humorous jokes/sight gags, and a good performances from its cast, especially Reynolds. Personally, I liked this movie. It has some familiar beats, and some elements aren't exactly original/polished, but I felt that the film was loads of fun to watch and it was some good popcorn blockbuster entertainment. Plus, I felt that all the anticipation and delays for this movie was well worth the wait. Thus, my recommendation for this movie is charmingly highly recommended, as it's something that many can watch, casual moviegoers or gamers, and achieve the same outcome about this movie, relatively speaking. In the end, Free Guy might be one of the better movies within the video game film adaptation endeavor making, delivering some charming and fun story beats and a well-balanced action and comedy narrative that proves more well-rounded than to be first expected. More to the point, Free Guy is a great and fun to watch with simplistic nature of movie escapism. Plain and simple. Just remember, don't just have a good day. Have a great day. Free Guy, 2021, is an American science fiction comedy film directed by Shawn Levy and written by Matt Lieberman and Zach Penn. The film stars Ryan Reynolds, Jodie Comer, Lil Rel Howery, Joe Keery, Utkarsh Ambedkar, and Taika Waititi. The film follows Guy Ryan Reynolds, an NPC, non-playable character, in the fictional game Free City. The game is an umporg and looks something like Grand Theft Auto meets Fortnite. You can tell there's probably a lot of microtransactions. The setting was very reminiscent of the Lego Movie, 2014, and some instances even reminded me of The Truman Show, 1998. The secondary protagonists are Millie played by Jodie Comer, Killing Eve, and Keys played by Joe Keery, Stranger Things. After making a startling discovery, Guy, Millie, and Keys work together to protect the future of the game from the deceptive Antoine, played by Taika Waititi Jojo Rabbit. There's lots of action throughout the film, and although the special effects are extremely over the top, it doesn't really matter because it's supposed to be emulating a video game. It's bright and colorful, and there are a few fun cameos to spot too. Free Guy is fun and entertaining to watch, however I think the runtime is a bit long for the limited scope of the film. Moreover, although it's enjoyable, the film doesn't push the boundaries of what we are used to seeing in comedy sci-fi. The thematic content surrounding the nature of artificial intelligence is very limited, and although the characters sometimes speak of wider repercussions, this is not really explored within the film. That being said, there are lots of sweet moments, especially between Guy and Buddy. It's pretty charming, worth watching, and available to watch now with a Disney Plus subscription in the UK. Of all the post-pandemic film openings, the one that's had me the most excited was Free Guy. I'd be lying if I said The Matrix Resurrections wasn't also at the top of that list. Taking place in a fantasy video game world where Ryan Reynolds can really lean into his Ryan Reynolds-ness in a more family-friendly PG-13 way, think Deadpoolish snark and humor with way less F-words, the movie looked like a perfect summertime film. But even though I'd been tracking Reynolds and his usual hilarious self-aware online and social advertising for the film, including this brilliant bit on Reynolds' YouTube channel titled Deadpool and Korg React, Free Guy wasn't quite enough to draw me back to my local Cineplex. The film took the recently all too familiar torturous route to the big screen, planned for release on July 3, 2020, then moving to December, then May 2021, then finally settling on and sticking with an August 13 release. Fortunately, it had a fast track to the home market, becoming available to digital retailers like Kaleidoscape just 45 days after its theatrical release. Interestingly, this is one of the first 20th Century Fox releases following the company's acquisition by Disney. It currently isn't available on Disney Plus. There is a link to it if you search on Google, but it takes you to an error page, so if you want to watch it now, Kaleidoscape offers the highest quality version available in full 4K HDR with a Dolby Atmos soundtrack. Free Guy is one of those movies that has two different levels of appeal. For the hardcore gamer, there are tons of inside nods, winks, and cameos that will resonate as true and familiar, but having an understanding of gaming and open worlds isn't necessary to enjoying the film and having a good time. It also feels like a bit of a mash-up of other movies. This isn't meant as a negative, just that as much as it is new, it also feels familiar, and you can tell it borrows ideas and style from movies like The Lego Movie, Ready Player One, The Truman Show, The Matrix, and Live Die Repeat, and video games like Grand Theft Auto and Fortnite, but interspersed with Reynolds' snarky humor and one-liners such as "compared with ice cream, coffee tastes like liquid suffering." There are also some fun cameos many you might not recognize until the credits and a couple of really fun refs to the MCU. The film opens in Free City, an open-world game environment where sunglasses people are heroes, or at least are human players acting like gods doing whatever they want, which is typically wreaking all manner of havoc on the city and any NPCs, non-playable characters, they encounter wandering around going through their programmed routines. One of the NPCs is Guy Reynolds, a bank teller that wakes up every morning, says hello to his goldfish, gets the same scalding cup of medium coffee, cream, 2 sugars, and then heads into work to be robbed over and over along with his best friend, a Kevin Hart-esque security guard named Buddy, Lil Rel Howery. One day while headed home, Guy encounters Molotov girl, Jodie Comer, a player whose real name is Millie. Hearing her humming a song awakens something in Guy, and the next time he's robbed, instead of just lying down and taking it, Guy decides to grab the sunglasses from his robber. When he puts them on, his eyes are open to the real world around him, and he sees things the way human gamers do. This gives him the power to be free and the ability to break his routine and do whatever he wants, which is trying to track down Molotov girl. During his exploits of trying to level up, he becomes a worldwide sensation known as Blue Shirt Guy due to his ever-present skin choice of light blue shirts and khaki pants. While this is all happening in the Free City game world, Millie is involved in a lawsuit with Tsunami Games in the real world. She contends that head developer Antoine Take-A-Wait-It-I stole the source code she and her partner Walter Joe developed for another project known as Free Life, which would give NPCs far greater AI and the ability to grow and act like real people, and that the evidence lies hidden somewhere inside the game. The race is on for Millie to find the proof she needs before Antoine shuts down the Free City servers and switches over to his new game, Free City 2, which will erase all proof of Millie's stolen IP, as well as wipe out Guy's world and all of his friends. Shot in a variety of resolutions 2.8, 3.4, and 6.5K. This transfer is taken from 6.5K source material and finished at a 2K digital intermediate, not unusual for films with this much CGI work, and there is a ton of CGI, with virtually every image you see within the Free City world somehow digitally manipulated, altered, or enhanced. Images are beautifully clean, clear, and noise-free. Some shots within Free City, specifically backgrounds where much of the CGI is happening, have occasional softness, almost appearing film-like but without any grain or noise. Close-ups really shine with detail, letting you appreciate every line, whisker, and pore in actors' faces. One scene has a close-up of Buddy's security badge, and you can see every bump, line, and detail of its texture. Other shots, such as near the end where a crowd of NPCs gathers, just had incredible depth and full-field razor-sharp focus. There's also a nice play between the visuals in the idyllic perfection of Free City and life in the real world. Free City is bright and vibrant, especially once Guy puts on his glasses and really lets the wider color gamut strut its stuff with things like bright neon signs and lights, or the gleaming reds, yellows, oranges, and even pinks of the near-constant stable of exotic cars racing around the streets, whereas the real world is darker and more sterile. Visually, Free Guy is a treat to look at, with lots of varied environments inside the game, such as Molotov Girl's base, or Revenjamin Buttons, Channing Tatum, Lair, or the multiplayer Hangout Lounge, which all have totally unique looks to them, keeping things visually interesting. With such a fabricated fantasy environment as Free City, you'd expect an active and engaging Dolby Atmos mix, and it delivers. From the very opening, you get the sounds of things swooshing past and overhead, with tons of ambient street sounds, sirens, traffic, gunfire that fill Free City. This is a place where tanks roll through the streets, helicopters swoop overhead to blow stuff up, and trains suddenly barrel across the street right in front of you, and the Atmos audio puts you right in the middle of it. There's frequent activity in the height channels, and lots of demo-worthy material here to show off your system. During one scene, a game developer engages God mode, and pillars, beams, and stairs appear and construct from all around and fall in from the ceiling, or there's the sounds of characters walking around up overhead, and a scene reminiscent of the dream world collapsing in Inception, where buildings are crushing in and collapsing all around. Deep, authoritative bass is frequent, whether from the numerous gunshots with pistol and shotgun blast concussions you feel in your chest, explosions, crashes, or the randomly appearing freight train. Free Guy definitely doesn't take itself too seriously and is just a load of fun to sit back and enjoy. Unless you belong to that subsection that just hates Ryan Reynolds and, come on, get over Green Lantern already, this makes a great night at the movies, with a bunch of little Easter eggs that look great up on a large home cinema screen and reward repeat viewing. The Canadian director Shawn Levy takes a particular joy in breathing life into things that should, by rights, be inanimate. So the jump from the sentient statues and relics of the Night at the Museum franchise to the virtual carnage of an ultra-violent video game in Free Guy is not as much of a stretch as it might at first seem. In this case it's a non-playable character, or NPC, that is jolted out of its background role as cannon fodder for preteen gamers. Unaware that he's in a game, bank teller Guy, a wide-eyed and adorable Ryan Reynolds, is content with his daily ritual of coffee, banter with best friend buddy, Lil Rel Howery, and upwards of 5 separate armed raids on his place of work, until he sees Molotov Girl, the online avatar of Millie, Jodie Comer, hitting the sweet spot between unapproachable cool and utterly beguiling. Having crossed the Rubicon that prevents the normals from talking to the sunglasses people, or players' avatars, Guy starts to learn the rules of the game he didn't know he was part of. A combination of puppyish devotion to Millie, who has her own reasons for doggedly returning each day, and inherent decency means that he's unexpectedly good at it. Tweens and teens will embrace the pinballing energy, the gamer vlogger cameos and the fact that there are more Easter eggs than Cadbury World. But the film's reach is considerably wider. There are thematic parallels with everything from the Lego Movie to The Matrix, but key to its appeal is an unabashed sweetness and goofy enthusiasm that proves irresistible. Guy lives in a glittering metropolis called Free City, where he jumps out of bed every morning, puts on a crisp blue shirt and goes to work. Little does he know, however, that he is just a character in an open-world computer game, living his carefree life in an endless loop. But while Guy is happy with daily routine, he misses a woman by his side in his digital life. That changes when he meets Molotov Girl, who is also at home in Free City. The only difference is that she is played by Millie, a programmer who co-developed the game. When she puts a code into the game, it makes Guy realize that his world is a computer game. If other developers want to overwrite the game with a newer version, that's the start of a race against time to save the current game. After the first draft of the script was completed in August 2016, Free Guy was put into development by 20th Century Fox. However, the project came to a standstill for a while due to the acquisition by Disney. After this acquisition was completed in March 2019, Free Guy was one of the first Fox films to continue production under the new studio name 20th Century Studios. Director Shawn Levy had already seen the script in 2016, but saw no point in it at the time. However, when Levy was introduced to Ryan Reynolds by their mutual friend Hugh Jackman, the two decided to work on it together. After the film premiered in Dutch cinemas on August 11, the film suddenly appeared last week exclusively and at no extra cost on Disney+, Disney's streaming service. The face of Free Guy is Ryan Reynolds, who is also a producer on the film. Reynolds had been working as an actor for quite some time when he took on the role of anti-hero Deadpool. It sent his career soaring into the sky, resulting in films such as The Hitman's Bodyguard and Six Underground. Yet we cannot deny that Reynolds often taps from the same barrel. He's the same gossipy, good-looking smart ass with a comedic streak over and over again. Despite the fact that this is no different in Free Guy, it works wonderfully well here. This is mainly due to the fact that the film is a feast of recognition for people who have a warm heart for the game industry. For example, Free City, the open world in which the film is set, openly borrows from games such as Fortnite and Grand Theft Auto. Now it almost sounds like Free Guy is only to be enjoyed by game lovers, but despite the fact that it will certainly add a dimension if you have ever played some games in your life, Free Guy is above all just an extremely entertaining film. The film does not excel in originality, because what we are presented with sometimes almost looks like a beautiful remake of Jim Carrey vehicle The Truman Show. But just as in that film you empathize with the main character when he wants to break out of his regular routine, it is no different with Free Guy. And so you go on a journey with Guy when he suddenly feels the need to change course. What starts with a different type of coffee quickly becomes a battle for a higher status in the game. But unlike a logged-in player, Guy is an NPC, or a non-player character. It makes for a wonderful film, full of wonderful situations in which he encounters the necessary colorful characters. Speaking of which, take Waititi plays a delightful role as swaggy head developer Antoine. Free Guy offers a thoroughly entertaining combination of clever concept, delightful humor, and a perfectly fitting Ryan Reynolds. The film seems akin to The Truman Show in terms of story, but offers a lot more fun than that drama in that respect. And fun seems to be something very important for this film anyway, because there are a lot of things that show that it was probably also very pleasant at the workplace. Just look at a wonderful find like the dude, a muscle bonk also played by Reynolds, or the nice casual Waititi. And then there's Jodie Comer, who can also show quite a bit more movement in her handsome face here than in Killing Eve. And where Deadpool is already made for Reynolds, Guy certainly fits in that list. And despite his frequent betrayal of being limited in his resources, he still manages to conjure up a damn fun movie. And where Free Guy certainly has something extra to offer for people who are familiar with online gaming, it is above all just a very nice carefree film with which you can escape reality for a while, just like with a game. As has been noted by many, as well as frequently on this site, it's becoming harder to recall the last time there was a big budget blockbuster not based on previously established intellectual property. Whether good or bad, nearly every major Hollywood release is a sequel, prequel, spin-off, or an adaptation of a book, show, game, etc. Gone are the days where the star, a high-concept premise, or just the film itself can get butts in seats. Today, it's all about what costume the actors wear, or which recognizable cinematic universe they inhabit. While there's no shortage of quality, the lack of new characters, new concepts, and new creations is definitely being felt. Therefore, it's startling when you realize that Free Guy, 2021, is a modern, big-budget, action comedy that isn't based off anything. Guy, Ryan Reynolds, a happy-go-lucky, optimistic bank teller lives in a place called Free City. His handy narration informs us that Free City is filled with so-called heroes, all wearing sunglasses, who willfully go around the place, starting fights, blowing things up, stealing money and basically making a mess of things in whatever way they choose. Guy and the inhabitants of Free City just go about their day either unwilling to defend themselves, or just continue ignoring the endless chaos. One day, Guy deviates from his routine when he comes across a sunglass person named Molotov Girl, Jodie Comer. His fascination with her leads the audience to discover that Free City is an online video game. The sunglass people are players and Guy is actually a NPC, non-player character. As such, Guy quickly becomes a better player than the human players, gaining points by doing right instead of wrong. As is probably evident, Free Guy is a science fiction film dealing in concepts of artificial intelligence, simulated reality, and online gaming. Thus, you can probably already guess there are shades of The Truman Show, 1998, The Matrix, 1999, and more recently, Ready Player One, 2018. While there are definitely notable tropes borrowed and remixed, director Shawn Levy and screenwriters Matt Lieberman and Zach Penn have concocted a fresh cocktail, delivering a relatively unique spin on these ideas. Sure, things like Ready Player One already covered online games as reality, but Free Guy outclasses its predecessors by not hanging its entire existence on pop culture references. There are plenty of references to find, but the narrative is instead built from the audience's basic understanding of modern gaming culture. This makes Free Guy feel new because its script couldn't have been written before now. Despite this, Levy knows that audiences still expect a healthy amount of action, laughs and thrills. Given that Free Guy is a thoroughly modern action comedy, there was a high probability the action could have been an incomprehensible mess of ugly CGI and headache-inducing explosions. Happily, Levy and cinematographer George Richmond have created exciting action sequences that are fun, coherent and creative. Practical special effects are often given credibility over computer-generated effects, but Free Guy delivers beautifully rendered environments and creatively staged set pieces. Most impressively, it manages to reach the expected levels of spectacle while still maintaining a natural and elegant pace. We aren't just rushing from one set piece to the next, as there's plenty of time to stop, smell the roses, and let the character development breathe. With that in mind, it's important to point out just how optimistic Free Guy is regarding its discussion around artificial intelligence. At this point, it's widely expected that films about AI immediately have to take the form of a cautionary tale, but Free Guy thankfully doesn't play into that trope. The discovery of artificially created sentient life is framed as a major scientific breakthrough, completely avoiding the cliched concept of robots taking over the world. The film doesn't sidestep an analysis of self-aware computer software, it just looks at it from an excitingly positive angle. It's clear that Levy wants to open our eyes to technological possibilities, as opposed to scaring us away from them. This ties directly into Ryan Reynolds' performance as Guy, which also takes a slightly different approach to what you expect from the setup. The film openly addresses the fact that violent video games are an outlet for people to safely live out violent impulses, so it seems like a no-brainer for Guy to eventually discover and revel in that feeling. However, Guy never stoops to the impulses of the human players, using his skills to protect and serve rather than cause damage and harm. Reynolds' likable screen presence makes him perfect for this kind of role, and even goes the extra mile in making Guy compelling despite not having full awareness of who or what he is. Narrative agency is mostly given to Jodie Comer as Molotov Girl, who has an independent arc outside of how she transforms after meeting Guy. There is one major element that isn't as refined as the rest, which is how the film delivers its thesis about franchising. It's almost comical to think that an original, big-budget film like Free Guy uses its platform to comment on how studios prevent the creation of original content. For the most part, this narrative theme is well handled and makes its point clearly, so it's a shame that some of the most memorable moments rest on references to pre-existing franchises. If you're going to make the point that there's a lack of originality in modern content, wouldn't you want the best moments to actually be original? To be fair, the way it's currently framed isn't completely wrong-headed, as it makes sense for the film to address the existence of franchises audiences are aware of. It's certainly an odd conundrum and there's no easy way out of it, but that also makes this a forgivable nitpick. Ultimately, Free Guy is a solid example of what you can get when filmmakers are allowed to run wild with their studio mandates. This isn't high art, nor is it hugely experimental, yet there is definitely artistry to the presentation and a strong sense of humor in the writing. Free Guy is a fantastic and fun action comedy which deserves to be remembered. Hopefully, its success will prompt more original films at the big budget level, in addition to the inevitable Free Guy sequels. In all honesty, that's probably not likely to happen, but one can dream. We've come a long way since Disney released Tron 39 years ago so far, in fact, that some people actually buy into the theory that what we think of as existence could be just a giant computer simulation, as Elon Musk described at Code Conference in 2016, 40 years ago we had Pong, like two rectangles and a dot. That was what games were. Now 40 years later, we have photorealistic 3D simulations with millions of people playing simultaneously, and it's getting better every year, Musk mused. Therefore, if you assume any rate of improvement at all, the games will become indistinguishable from reality. In Free Guy, an inventive, Much better than you'd expect. 2020 summer tentpole that's finally being released post-pandemic. Ryan Reynolds plays a video game character who doesn't realize that his world isn't real. Guy is what's known as an NPC, or non-playable character. In a realm of ones and zeros, he's a zero, just another of the generic background sims who serve as collateral damage for carnage hounds in a game called Free City, a Grand Theft Auto-style free-for-all where players are encouraged to wreak havoc, joyriding, and blasting their way through a virtual metropolis. Wearing a look of almost Capriesque simplicity on his mug most times, Reynolds' upbeat, blue shirt and khakis bank teller has just enough programming to hit the deck during a stick-up, or to utter a stock phrase before being struck by a car in the street. And like Neo in The Matrix, he doesn't know what he doesn't know. Free Guy focuses on the moment, all that changes, the red pill rift when his consciousness blows open, after the minimal AI that governs his behavior evolves enough to give Guy something resembling free will, and a pretty raunchy sense of humor, considering how oblivious he is to most things. Whether through a lack of originality or a desire to minimize the exposition in a movie whose elevated concept could have gotten unnecessarily complicated, the opening minutes of Free Guy borrow heavily from both Deadpool and the Lego Movie, as Reynolds wryly narrates the rules of his world. In Free City, the Sunglass People are the heroes, represented here by a self-deprecating Channing Tatum, while everyone else are NPCs, blithely going about their lives in an endless, uninteresting loop, a Groundhog Day conceit that lifts still more DNA from other films, including last spring's game-based action comedy Boss Level. Okay, so Free Guy isn't the most original movie of all time, but what matters here is how co-writers Matt Lieberman, The Addams Family, and Zach Penn, Ready Player One, make it fresh. Simple, by asking, what would happen if Guy, an NPC, fell in love with one of the players he sees inside the game? It's like Who Framed Roger Rabbit in reverse, where the Hubba Hubba fantasy girl isn't an imaginary toon but the avatar for Millie, Jodie Comer, aka Molotov Girl, the Pygmalion-like coder who conceived him. So long as audiences like Guy, and he's played by Ryan Reynolds, so what's not to like? It's easy to root for an impossible romance between the pixelated Romeo and his flesh and blood ideal. Inventively brought to life by Night at the Museum Helmer Shawn Levy, who designs Free City to look like a cross between a studio backlit and one of those pliable cityscapes seen in Inception, the movie's overstuffed plot divides its time between the game Guy inhabits and Millie's real world, where she and former programming partner Walter Keys McKees, Joe Keery, have parted ways. Keys now works for Tsunami, the big-time gaming company that acquired their idealistic early project and, if Millie is correct, buried their code somewhere inside Free City instead of developing it as agreed, which, I'm pretty sure, is something software companies are free to do as they please after purchasing someone else's work, but no matter. Like Jeff Bridges' character in Tron, Millie sneaks into the game trying to prove that the developers swiped our AI engine for his shooter. Needless to say, all those intrigues are considerably less interesting than Guy's quandary inside the game, although Levy balances things out somewhat by casting Taika Waititi as Antoine, the massively uncouth Tsunami owner who comes across as a hilarious combination of all of Silicon Valley's worst character traits: disgustingly rich, immature, abrasive, and inclined to treat everyone who works for him as expendable peons. Waititi makes his entrance late in the film but nearly hijacks it when he does, inventing a uniquely larger-than-life greed and attention-monger bent on forcing the millions of Free City players worldwide, glimpses of whom we see in hovels and internet cafes, to upgrade to his forthcoming sequel. Apparently, Free City 2 isn't backward compatible and will effectively wipe out the revolutionary AI miracle of Guy's rapidly self-improving personality, just like pretty much every video game sequel ever, by my understanding. This would be a good point to admit that my own investment in video games dried up almost 30 years ago, when the Sega Genesis came along and rendered my 8-bit Sega Master System obsolete a month or two after I'd poured my life savings into the console. I pretty much stopped playing video games, or anything more complicated than Candy Crush, at that point, whereas my brother now spends more of his waking hours gaming than doing anything else. Free Guy wasn't made for me so much as it was for those who invest actual dollars in in-game currency, buying skins and who knows what to enhance their avatars. Free Guy assumes a certain level of video game literacy, as in vaguely Matrix-like action sequences where Keys and Tsunami colleague Mauser, Utkarsh Ambedkar, enter the game as virtual cops and take out offending players. Is that a thing? Or when Antoine reboots the game in order to wipe Guy's brain, aren't there easier ways to bug fix? When all that fails, Antoine takes a fire axe to the server room, which strikes me as one of those Hollywood conceits like the virus in Sandra Bullock thriller The Net melting the screens of every computer it infects that the filmmakers have embellished to make a thoroughly uncinematic geek concept more exciting. But let's be honest, Free Guy is a lot of fun, despite the fact that Levy and the screenwriters seem to be changing the rules as they go. Reynolds might be a little too charismatic to be believable as a personality-devoid NPC, the way that Jim Carrey always seemed too chirpily self-aware as the ostensibly naive star of The Truman Show, but it's a thrill to watch the character come into his own, as Blue Shirt Guy, as the fans following his exploits in the game call him, levels up in a hurry. Less experienced, Comer and Kiri are young TV actors, from Killing Eve and Stranger Things, still trying to pin down their respective big screen appeal, and they come off more generic than the virtual dude their characters invented here. I'm skeptical that the world really wants the fishbowl game they developed, or that people would rather watch an autonomous video game than play one themselves. But Free Guy is all but guaranteed to make audiences think differently about NPCs. The medium is still in its infancy, and 40 years from now, if Musk is right, when those virtual characters are sophisticated enough to be indistinguishable from people, it could be fun to go back and see how much Free Guy got right. The video game movie is obscenely hard to get right. Some might suggest that it's impossible because once you remove the player's ability to influence the action, then you fundamentally change the story to the point where any adaptation just won't work. I'd suggest it's just because the people making movies don't know anything about video games other than they make money, so why not make a movie about them? Things can go horribly wrong, from the story not suiting the game, Hi Sonic, to the actors being horribly cast, Super Mario Bros., both live action and the upcoming animated versions. Honestly. Seriously, Chris Pratt is Mario, that's a thing that's happening, it's so easy to screw up. Then along comes Free Guy to do a video game movie absolutely perfectly. Free Guy takes place in a little town called Free City where a guy named Guy, Ryan Reynolds, has a perfect life. See, Guy works in a bank and every day he gets up, says hi to his fish, has a coffee, goes to the bank and then gets robbed half a dozen times by cool heroes in sunglasses who also blow things up all the time and sometimes shoot Guy in the face. Guy is a video game character, that's the conceit of the film. He's an NPC, non-playable character, in a Grand Theft Auto-esque game that is obscenely popular. One day Guy spots an actual human player, Millie, Jodie Comer, and decides to follow her. Guy's programming has changed, allowing him to make his own decisions, and Guy seems to have decided that he finally wants to be the hero of his own game. From the second Free Guy boots up and starts playing, it's pretty much perfect. There's a sincere love of video games and video game culture that just emanates from every second of the film. It's a big fun silly hug from the medium of film to the medium of games, and goddamn is it just pure joy. It's hard to do anything other than smile like a moron when Fantasy by Mariah Carey plays while you're watching video game characters do sick burnouts in front of exploding buildings, because that's just a goddamn amazing way to open a film and it never slows down from there. Wall-to-wall explosions is practically guaranteed by Free Guy, and if all you want is pure spectacle then we've got you covered, but between things blowing up and the comical video game violence is this pure heartwarming story about making your own choices and living your life for yourself and not for some big evil corporation, brought to you by Disney. It's obscenely charming from start to finish. That charm comes courtesy of possibly Ryan Reynolds' best performance, which is saying a lot. He's basically taken Deadpool and then done a bunch of nitrous so he's permanently happy while breaking the fourth wall and making reference jokes, and it's the best thing he's done, Same with Jodie Comer, who manages to be so good that when she jumps into her second role I legit thought it was another actor. Joe Carey makes his character a quiet hero who you grow to love throughout the film and take a wait at well, I'm pretty sure they just turned the camera on and said, do whatever the fuck you want, and God did the rest. This is one hell of a cast. It's not even a little shock to me that there's already talk about a sequel, because who wouldn't want to put this cast together again? Every single thing about Free Guy just works. It throws in some absolutely amazing subtle video game jokes. Look for the skybox underneath the road towards the end of the film. It's a subtle thing, but I loved that detail. Topical jokes about gun violence and how some gamers, specifically some, do not come for me on this one, are assholes, and even great use of Disney properties for one-off gags. Free Guy might be one of the first films since Wreck-It Ralph 2 to realize, oh wait, we're owned by the mouse and the mouse owns everything, which means we have a giant toy box full of IP we can play with, and oh boy does Free Guy know how to play with the extra IP it has access to. Free Guy is nothing short of pure joy. It has the laughs, the action and the heart that you don't really expect to see in video game films. It's unbelievably good, better than you could imagine. This is the kind of film that feels like it has a million potholes it could have fallen down, and it skipped over every single one with ease to just be an absolute delight in every possible way. I don't know how they're going to level up the fun factor in the sequel, but I'm eager to see where the story goes. What do you get if you throw The Truman Show, The Matrix, Wreck-It Ralph, and the Lego Movie into a blender, without understanding what made those movies so much deeper than they appear on the surface? This hot mess of a sci-fi action comedy that, at least, answers the burning question of our time: must hetero white men be the center of all the stories, even when they're not even real people? Even when there's literally nothing else going on in a flick except white guy must be hero. Free Guy is here to assure us that, yes, apparently yes they must, cause, like, Ryan Reynolds' guy, that's his name, and also his strongest quality, ordinary guyness, is not a real person. He is a collection of ones and zeros, digital background noise in an online multiplayer free-for-all, a game perhaps appropriately titled Free City. We don't learn much about Free City as an entertainment, beyond that it appears to be the sort of game, like Grand Theft Auto, in which regular folk get to play felons, bank heisters, convenience store stick-up robbers, and so on. You know, for fun. Insert eye roll emoji. Anyway, Guy is set dressing, a non-player character, NPC, in Free City, someone there to make the fake city feel like a real city, full of people going about their business around you, the player, whom you don't know anything about. The title of the movie would suggest that Guy represents the extra life or additional go you get in a game as a reward for finishing a special task or completing a level. But he's not that at all. Free Guy is supposedly a Valentine to gamers, but I wonder, Guy is a bank teller, so mostly his job in the game is to be someone for players to terrorize as they bust into the bank and announce an armed robbery. If Guy isn't real, has no self-awareness, cannot be terrorized, then fine, no harm, no foul. But Guy has suddenly woken up, developed a kind of artificial intelligence. He now knows he exists in a game. Imagine a movie that explored the ramifications of this, of the trauma inflicted on the likes of Guy day in, day out. Or, imagine a movie that tried to work through the appeal of sociopathic fantasies like the ones that Free City offers to meatbag, in real life people of all ages and genders, and the dehumanization that happens when it's okay to commit violence against people who aren't real. One brief cutaway to little girls reveling in this antisocial game seems like it's on the brink of getting it, but then, nah. All the nopes here. Guy is happy, so happy everything is awesome, even, and he is gonna be our hero and save Free City from being deleted from the mainframe in a game upgrade. He knows this is imminent via player Molotov Girl, Jodie Comer, Star Wars, The Rise of Skywalker, who is also Millie, one of the game's developers. And he knows Millie, now, because he has developed the digital hots for her. In fact, Free Guy suggests that Guy has achieved consciousness precisely because he has the hots for her. There is nothing appealing in anything about this scenario. Reynolds, the hitman's wife's bodyguard, Hobbs and Shaw, trades once again on the synthetic blandness that has defined his career. He's about as plastic as Lego Movie's Emmett Burkowski, which you'd think would be considered a negative, but Free Guy seems to feel this is a factor in Guy's favor, as if flavorless mundanity were a virtue. Screenwriters Matt Lieberman, Scoob, The Christmas Chronicles, and Zach Penn co-wrote Ready Player One, with which Free Guy shares an unacknowledged nihilistic despair under its cheerful candy coating, and Schlockmeister director Shawn Levy, The Internship, and recently announced as taking on a remake of John Carpenter's Starman, which I anticipate with dread, have zero interest in examining potential authentic appeal of an everyman's plight, but would rather play tediously, in no new or fun way with tropes of action movies and video games. Blink and you'll miss, except it's in the trailer's sigh, the prop joke about sunglasses that let Guy see the previously hidden functions of the game he exists in, click here for a power-up, click here for a new mission, and so on. If this is meant to be a nod to John Carpenter's ragingly anti-capitalist 1988 They Live, it's yet another pop culture reference that utterly misunderstands what it is referencing. This is a movie that simultaneously has no idea what a digital multiverse might offer meatbag people, no clue about how genuine AI could transform our ideas about what it means to be alive, and not even the slightest hint of the bread and circuses power that immersive entertainments have in our ultra-capitalist culture. If there could be a movie less clueless about all the things it is almost about, it's difficult to imagine it. This film, directed by Shawn Levy. Screenplay by Matt Lieberman. Story by Matt Lieberman. Produced by Ryan Reynolds. Starring Ryan Reynolds. Cinematography George Richmond. Edited by Dean Zimmerman. Music by Christoph Beck. Production companies Berlanti Productions. Distributed by 20th Century Studios. Release dates August 10, 2021. Running time 115 minutes. Country United States. Language English. Budget $100 to $125 million. Box office $331.5 million.